Good morning and welcome back to a brand new video. It is Saturday again already, so that means it's another episode of the Bike Fit series. Today we're going to be getting into a crank length debate, but the offer is still valid. If any of you guys are in the north of England and you're looking to get a bike fit, head over to Matt's website in the description box down below and use code THEULTIMATEFIT in the comment section of the form, and you will receive £20 off your fit. And with that being said, enjoy today's video.
From a performance perspective, having a shorter crank can help achieve So now what we're going to do is we're going to record some footage of Cam's existing position without any adjustment. We've got two camera systems on each side that are going to record some slow motion video capture. We can also set the cameras up from front and rear, so we've got like a full 360 visual really of you on the bike. And then we're going to use some software called Dartfish Pro Suite to analyse the position. And that's biomechanical analysis, so we go through our key positions that I've developed through my 7 years of doing this. So we'll go through some of those together, explain what we need to do to try and improve the position biomechanically, and we'll also maybe touch on a few of those key positions and hit home the importance of why we're analysing them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to analyse some key positions from our first shot of footage. We're going to pick this position apart and go through what we need to look at today to improve the position. So what aspects need improvement. So important to note, we're taking a shot of footage from both sides here. Bike fitting isn't just about analysing one side, you have to think of the bigger picture here. So it's also quite important to see if there's any asymmetries in these key positions between your left and right side. So we're looking here to begin with at the right side. We're starting off our analysis by looking at your knee extension, an ankling angle, specifically relating to your saddle height. So we're looking at the back of the bike first, and then we'll migrate forward. We can see here that we've got a knee extension of 135 degrees and an ankling angle of 21. So you're working in a good range at the moment. You've got good hamstring flexibility, and today we'd want to be fitting between 140 to 145 degrees knee extension. So you're kind of floating right in the middle there, which is good. And also your ankling angle is really good. We're looking at achieving an ankling angle of around 15 to 20 degrees. So you're a degree up from there. So pretty good starting position really. In terms of your saddle height, we'll also have a look at the other side now. So we can pull up this left side and have a look at the key position here. So we're very close in the knee extension between both sides actually, half a degree of difference. However, there's a little bit of difference in your ankling angle between left and right. So you do have a higher ankling angle on your left side, and we call that a bit of plantar flexion. It could be down to a couple of things. One of the things I want to have a look at is your cleat position, whether you've got more of a forward position of the cleat on that left side. Could be another factor in terms of tightness in the posterior chain that's causing this. But it's common to see some asymmetries here when we're really picking apart analysis frame by frame. But overall, we are in a good position with your saddle height, so I'm happy with that in terms of the first key position we're looking at. Knee extension looks really good, pleased with that. But now is the time to sort of investigate the position more. So we're going to go into your hip angle next. It's an important key position that we analyse as part of our Crimson Performance Fit. And we're also using some of the metrics we got from our screening assessment on the massage bed too, the range of movement data that we gathered. So I'm going to pull up the hip angle, should I say, on the footage now. We have a hip angle of 81 degrees here. So we know that we're working with inside your range of movement at the moment in terms of your hip flexion. The position that you've achieved on the Colnago at the moment is quite aggressive, so it's got quite a low front end, and it's quite a significant saddle to bar drop. So we sometimes see that the hip angle is a little bit more compressed, more closed, positions that are more aggressive. Earning the position is a key phrase here. So the fact that you've got exceptional hip flexion in terms of when we assess this on the massage bed means that you can still ride in this low aggressive position but still engage your glutes and produce good power. That's the theory behind it. So a bike fit is not just about throwing you on your bike and adjusting things and looking at a computer for guidance here, analysis for guidance. It's about looking at the bigger picture. So taking the data that that we assessed on the massage bed, and using it to achieve more of a biomechanically optimal position on the bike, and also seeing if the position that you've got currently is working with your physiology and range of movement, and currently it's pretty good. Yeah. So although the position is quite aggressive, you're still working inside your physiological parameters in flexibility. So it also comes on to the crank length debate here as well. I get asked a lot of questions about crank length by clients coming in that have maybe trolled through Google for answers as to what is their optimal crank length. Yeah. Obviously on your bike here, it's difficult to change crank length to test. Yeah. So it's quite useful to have a jig that allows you to do that and test crank length out. And my other studio over at Push Cartel, we have a jig there so we can do that. But generally, I'm a big advocate of shorter cranks. One of the key things here is that, does a rider need a shorter crank? Well, if a rider's got really limited hip flexion and they've got quite stiff hips, yeah, it can be a really positive change to make in terms of adjusting that part of your bike componentry. Having a shorter crank when you have more limited hip flexion, stiffer hips, can allow you to achieve a bit more stability in your pelvis, but also essentially reduces the circumference of the pedal stroke. So your knee isn't coming up inside a range in which you can't tolerate. Yeah. Now the key thing here is that reducing crank length by 2.5 mil isn't going to change things dramatically. It's quite rare that I would change someone's crank length by 2.5 mil. It's usually 5 mil and above. Okay. If we've got a rider that's had a hip replacement, generally we're going to have a shorter crank on there, yeah, to help them out. And also with shorter cranks, we found that from experience of dropping riders' crank lengths down and riders that suffer with chronic lower back pain, it's had a beneficial response there too. From a performance perspective, having a shorter crank can help achieve a higher cadence.
What happens if you're a sprinter, say? Is the longer, like the argument is the longer cranks more leverage, more power, or is that not necessarily the case?
Yeah, there's probably opening up a potential can of worms here in discussing this in a lot of detail, but yeah, ultimately a shorter crank is going to help with the pickup speed in terms of cadence, yeah, achieving max velocity in a sprint, for example. I have found really beneficial responses in reducing riders' crank length, but it is relative to the rider, yeah, and do they need that intervention. As part of a fit, again, it's there's lots to cover in a bike fit, but there can be some bigger gains to be made with other aspects of the rider's componentry on the bike rather than 2.5 mil in crank length. Yeah, yeah. And just think about it from this point of view. If you're buying a 58 frame, generally the bike will come with a 175 crank, yeah, and vice versa on a smaller frame size as well, 52 centimeter frame, 48 for example. The bike would come with a 170 crank. Now, if you are a really small rider and you're buying a smaller frame, it's something to consider in terms of the crank length as well, whether that 170 mil crank that would come as standard is too long for you. Yeah. So, from a stock perspective, manufacturers will put on a certain length crank on the bike. Yeah. But we'll find that in terms of a rider's physiology, on the more extreme ends of the spectrum there, we would find that we potentially need to adjust it from a stock componentry, maybe dropping the crank length down for a really small rider, for example. But we find the trend now with manufacturers actually implementing those changes on smaller bikes, yeah, which is awesome actually. It's good to see. Yeah. So for yourself, you're on a 175 crank length on your Colmargo at the moment, and I know on your Quark you have a 172.5.
Yeah, my power meter.
In all honesty, Cam, you're probably not going to notice any difference changing between them. On a slightly shorter crank, we'll probably find that we maybe have a little bit of a beneficial response in opening up your hip angle a little bit more. Okay.
But then, so when we put the shorter cranks on, we'll need to drop the saddle a little bit.
So putting shorter cranks on your bike, we will need to increase your saddle height a little bit. Yeah, so it's 2.5 mil. Okay.
Is that a simpler case of just put it up by 2.5 mil?
Yeah. So again, if you've got a longer crank on the bike, you would need to decrease the saddle height accordingly. Yeah. So yeah, you just need to measure up the change there in the saddle height between the crank lengths. Yeah. Generally, you don't really need to adjust the saddle fore and aft because it's such a small difference. So I would suggest keeping the saddle setback the same, just adjusting the saddle height accordingly.